Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. This is Joni Young and I hope you subscribe now and watch this video and paint along with me. Today we're working on an 18 by 24 canvas using the following brush and paints. I've got turquoise here, a number 30 filbert brush. You can use any size of blending brush that you want. This is just one that I prefer. I've also got a light yellowy green here, and I'm going to get a little bit of water on my brush and just start playing around with my paint, making all sorts of abstract patterns, designs, and swirls. I tend to get a little playful with my fantasy paintings to begin with, and just want to create lots of different designs and patterns and then add more colors. And as the painting kind of just progresses, I start to see images and kind of develop a landscape and a scene. And that's how it kind of just comes together. I don't have any ideas in mind beforehand. So it can be a little bit tricky to make these types of paintings of mine a tutorial, but I'm going to do my best to do this for you guys. I've had so many requests for this. I've got a lot of time lapse with no talking out there for other of my fantasy pieces that are like this. So I'll leave a link below if you guys want to have a look at some more just for some inspiration, and maybe some of you just enjoy watching a painting come together this way. So again, just pulling and swirling that paint around, letting the colors flow naturally on the canvas and not holding back, not having any idea in mind what I want to do. And it's really fun and freeing to paint this way. Slowly, I'm going to start to add more colors. You can see I just added a little bit more of that light green there. So you can see I'm just pulling my brush around in all sorts of directions, up and down, diagonal, lots of little wiggles to make it look sort of like it's ribbons kind of flowing around the canvas. After working all that paint out of my brush, I'm going to take my cerulean blue and I'm just going to directly squeeze out my colors onto the canvas. And without washing my brush, I'll begin adding this into the turquoise and the yellow, blending and creating those soft, flowy lines. Now, what I really enjoy about this painting process and this approach to painting is that I don't have anything to compare it to, so it's automatically not going to be wrong or bad. It is what it is, and it's more about the process and the sheer enjoyment I get and the contentment that it brings me, creating and just pulling all of the colors together, all of that paint, creating swirls and all sorts of different colors along the way when the colors all blend into one another. And then as you kind of just get into this very relaxed state of mind, here I am adding some of my neon pink. This is by Holbein. I'll leave a link below for the types of paints that I'm using, guys. I'm also going to add some titanium white to create some softer shades and tones of all the other colors. And with my palette knife here, just for fun and just because it is kind of satisfying to gently pull and scrape that layer of paint across, I'm going to take a large mop blending brush and I'm just lightly starting to pull and kind of dust and twirl the pink and the white into that light green, leaving little pockets of that green showing. But as I was saying, it's very good for your well-being to create art like this where you kind of just lose yourself in it and you don't have anything to compare it to. You're just in that state of mind like when you were a little kid and your mom gave you a box of crayons or felts or even some Play-Doh or whatever it was that you like to craft with or create with as a child, and you just were having fun. You didn't think about anything else. And that's kind of the state of mind that you get into when you approach artwork like this. And I really wanted to share these types of paintings with you because there's so much negativity in the world and there's so much competition. Everybody wants to be like somebody else and try to copy them. And I want to encourage you guys to delve into your own unique, authentic, creative selves. And I don't want to hold anything back. I believe we're all given gifts in this lifetime to share with other people. And if you guys can get anything positive out of my videos, then I feel like I've done my job and I've done some good. And if all you guys get out of this is just a sense of calmness and you're enjoying my process and watching, that's really, really awesome to know. And I appreciate all of your support and all your comments. So I highly recommend picking any colors that you want, not having any idea in mind, not even thinking that you're going to make a landscape. Just play with your paints and your brushes and have fun, and you just never know what can come out of that. You can just forget all your problems, forget everything else that's going on in the world, and before you know it, a few hours have passed by and you're in a very relaxed state of mind. So you can see here that I'm taking my pink, a little bit of white, softly blending in with the blue, the turquoise, and creating different tones. And I'm going to add a few more colors now in my titanium white, some more neon colors. I've got luminous rose. I've also got some cadmium yellow cool. Now, of course, you guys can use any colors that you want for yours. These are just ones that for no other reason than I just really enjoy these colors. So I kind of end up using a lot of different colors. I enjoy the flow of colors together, like rainbows, and so I tend to use quite a bit of color in my paintings. That being said, I do have quite a bit of paintings that are limited palettes and just black and white only, so I kind of hop back and forth sometimes, but 99% of the time I'm using a lot of color. And I'm taking some of my yellow, my neon pink, and some white, and I'm just going to start making little ribbons and wiggling and flowing with my brush one color into the next. And I'm just going to continue along, adding more and more pink. And I love the pink combined with the yellow because I get that orange tone, that really vibrant electric orange tone. So it's kind of nice to play around with your neons. And if you haven't used neon paints before and you're kind of like afraid because you're too afraid to use something so bright, don't be. It's so enjoyable to use, and they're very nice to mix with your regular acrylics. You can create so many different colors. So here I'm using just straight neon pink without the yellow, a little bit of white here and there, just to create a more of a cool pink rather than that peachy pink coral color. And again, just having fun, creating lots of different brush strokes and designs, ripples, little scoops, and then picking up, dunking my brush in the water. I think you guys can see there off to the left. I get quite a bit of water and work out all that excess paint out of my brush. And this is part of my intuitive process. I love this. This is so satisfying. I get so many comments about my drips in my artwork. People say, why do you do the drips? Other people just love it. It's mostly just because I really enjoy it. I love the energy, the dripping of the water and the paint flowing down the canvas. But I also like to incorporate those drips somehow into a scene. They can end up being vines that are hanging or tree trunks. Now here I've got my luminous rose, and I'm mixing it with a little bit of my pink and softly lining it up right against the color I previously used. So I've got quite a flowy, ribbony pattern happening here that's really fun. And I'm going to take a bit of turquoise and white, and I'm going to just start creating some flowy brush strokes up towards the left side here, and start to make it curve over and join up a little bit into that yellow and green. And I'll take a bit of my luminous rose with my turquoise and my white and go back over to the right there and make some more little ribbons and swirls just off to the side. And I often get asked what motivates me and then inspires these pieces, and I don't really have one answer for that. I'm not really sure, to be honest. All I know is that I've always had a real love for color, and I'm mostly led by color, and I like to create movement and swirls, and really get playful with my brush strokes. And I do have kind of a wild imagination, and I always tend to see more in everything than what's really there. And I express that onto a canvas with paint. And it can be staircases. For some reason, I'm really drawn to staircases. They represent moving forward, adventure, lots of different things for me. Waterfalls are another big thing I'm drawn to. Again, there's movement. I love the movement, the ripples, the sound of water. And I love trees, nature in general. Now this part I'm working on here felt sort of like a swan to me. I was getting a vibe, a feeling of a bird, a beautiful, graceful swan. There are quite a few images that come to me as I'm painting these pieces, and they can change and transform during the process, and I don't like to leave that out of the videos. I'll sometimes create something and then change my mind and take it off, and it's not because I didn't like it. It just kind of served its purpose of my expression, and then I wanted to put something else there after. So it's not like I made a mistake. I feel like there's no mistakes when creating pieces like this, because again, I have nothing to compare it to. I have nothing in mind that I'm expecting it to turn out like or be like. It's more of art therapy. Now, I'd really like to know, I'm curious to know how many of you that are watching right now enjoy this type of painting. Maybe you do this yourselves, and maybe you want to kind of just share your thoughts and part of your process here in the comments. I'd love to hear from you guys. And also what mediums you use. Maybe you're a watercolor artist, maybe you're an oil, maybe use colored pencil or pastel. And I'm gonna just start to pull some really wiggly types of lines and brush strokes here that eventually transform into a tree. So I'm going down and dragging my brush along the far right. Now with springtime coming, it's partially here, we're here on the island and on Vancouver Island in Canada, and we've got cherry blossoms starting to bloom and daffodils, a few irises. And so I've really got, I guess spring is really inspiring me in the back of my mind with this painting today, and a few of my paintings lately. I've been creating all sorts of Japanese inspired cherry blossom paintings. When I'm not painting, I really enjoy gardening. I love flowers and just being outside and hiking, getting lots of inspiration from outdoors. So I'm playing up on my pattern now, more adding that luminous rose. It's more like a beautiful violet, especially when combined with the turquoise, the cerulean blue, and over top. So just scumbling off the rest of that luminous rose out of my brush and exaggerating that area right up there. And you can make some really beautiful pastel colors using neons with a little bit of white. I think my favorite pastel tones ever are with the Holbein series of neon acrylics. So now I'm starting to envision where I'm going to place my source of light, and it's right in this little dip right in here. I'm going to take my cad yellow, a little bit of white, a flat brush, some water, And the paint underneath is slightly wet. I kind of like that really blurry, blended look. Kind of reminds me of oil pastels. And, you know, I went through a phase for a few years of using oil pastels, but they're just really, really messy and actually a lot of work and hard on my hands. I find the easiest thing for me to do and express myself the quickest when I have these creative, energetic flows happening is paint. And acrylics are really forgiving, and I can add highlights and layers over top of layers as quickly as I like. That's mainly why I really enjoy using acrylics. So creating some sun rays in here. And I should mention too that you guys are probably noticing by now that I'm wondering, is she left-handed or is she right-handed? Well, I'm ambidextrous, so I do tend to go for the paintbrush with my left hand most of the time, but if needed to, I can use my right hand as well. So you'll see sometimes for filming purposes, or just if my left arm is getting sore on larger paintings like this, I will switch over to my right. So just to kind of clear that up, now you guys know I do use both hands. And it doesn't matter. I know some of you guys will ask me or say to me that you find it hard to follow. If you're right-handed, you find it hard to follow a left-handed artist. It has nothing to do, learning how to paint and following an art instructor has nothing to do with what hand we use. So I learned quite a bit from watching painting shows on TV, and I never once thought about what hand they were using. You're just looking at what colors they're using, the brush strokes they're using. It doesn't matter. It's the same thing no matter what hand that you use. So don't let that throw you off, guys. And I just want to add some turquoise strips here up at the top. So again, just getting a bunch of water on my brush and squeezing and pinching off the top of my canvas to release all that excess paint. And as that's just dripping down there, I'm gonna create some more flowy lines down here towards the bottom. A little bit of that cad yellow and white. Some water on my brush to help flow. Now, a lot of you guys also ask how I keep my acrylic paint from drying out so quickly. There's a few different things that play into that. I work in a cool environment. So if it's really warm where you're painting, of course, it's gonna make your acrylic paint dry really quickly, which can be very frustrating. So it's cool in my studio. I use water when needed. I just prefer using water rather than any slow drying mediums or retarders. I don't like them. I don't like the texture of the paint. I don't like that I'm not in control of the drying aspect. By just using a little bit of water, you can extend your paint and it will also dry as quickly as you want it to. You can just have a hairdryer close by, but when you're using those slow drying mediums, they tend to act like oils, right? So it could be hours before you're able to add another layer on or highlights. So just keep that in mind. Another thing you can do is just have a fine mist of water. Use a little misting spray bottle to wet your palette. And that also really helps too. So the key word is a little bit of water, guys. And I also paint quite quickly. And it's not that I'm in a hurry. It's just that I'm kind of in the flow of things, I guess you could say. And everybody has their own way of painting, and some people really, really take their time. Depends on what you're painting, I guess. I find that when I'm really enjoying myself like this and having a lot of fun, I work quite quickly. So I'm coming in with more white now, and I'm just using my flat brush still here, creating some more little lines inside each of those patterns. And here I decide I'm starting to envisioning a beautiful path that flows off to the center there, right underneath that source of light, that beautiful sun with the rays. And I'm sliding my brush side to side where it's farther away, so it's going to be narrower. And then as it comes out towards us here in the foreground, I'm gonna slide my brush wider and wider. And that will give us that perspective, that sense of being in the foreground. I like to create paintings that really draw me in, that make me feel like I can step into that painting. And then right up here, I haven't decided if I want to do a bunch of cascading little waterfalls or perhaps a little staircase. It might be both, I'm not sure at this point. I kind of want to bring it up and add it into that flow, those lines, the direction that's going in. I like my landscapes to be one with the patterns that I create and have everything have a natural flow to them. So I'm going to add a little bit more to this path here in the foreground, and I'm using mainly that yellow and white. Now you can use any color that you want for your path. You could use brown if you wanted. I really like burnt sienna, a little bit of yellow ochre, but for now this is what I really feel like I want to use, a light soft green that feels like springtime to me, very fresh looking. And then I'm going to begin to exaggerate the white shape towards the left where that staircase or little waterfalls are kind of going up. I kind of just create a few little lines and a little bit more of a pattern, and for no reason at all other than I just felt like I needed to do that. It's kind of hard to explain. This is actually the first time doing a step-by-step tutorial with talking through the process of these paintings, and a lot of the times I'm just doing stuff just because I feel like I need to at that moment. I don't really have an explanation or a specific reason. I'm just not thinking at all and just doing whatever I want, whatever I feel like, whatever the brush, paint, and canvas is telling me to do, and my imagination, of course. So once I finish playing around with these lines and these swirls here on the left, I'm gonna start coming in with my big tree on the right. And I'm gonna be using a little bit of Mars Black, and I'm also gonna be using some burnt sienna. So here are my two colors, Mars Black, burnt sienna. I'm not using much water at all. I want this to be very thick and dark and rich looking, and I choose burnt sienna because I just love the richness that it has, the redness that it has to it, and the warmth. It tends to work really well with my colorful pieces, and the black will add that intensity that I really want to add to this. I want a strong contrast against all of the pastels that are in this painting, all those soft colors. I like this for a balance. And I'm using one of my longer filbert brushes. It's a small filbert, but it's got a longer end to it. So it helps me to create these long, flowing, wiggly looking branches. You can use any brush that you want for creating your branches, such as a round brush, a liner brush, a small flat would work. And that's something else I kind of just want to touch over right now, the fact that a lot of you guys think that you can't follow along with certain paintings or tutorials if you don't think you have the same color, brush, or canvas that I'm using, and that's definitely not true. Don't ever let that hold you guys back, okay? You can use paint at your own ability and skill level with whatever you have, because definitely when I first started painting about 20 some years ago, I had nothing except for we were doing home improvements at that time and just starting out, and all I had were little scrap pieces of drywall and house paint and house paint brushes, and I started just painting landscapes on them for fun, and taught myself from there. So no excuses, guys. You just get painting with whatever you have. So I've got that watered down drippy paint up there that I'm kind of using to bring into this tree and this landscape as some drippy moss or little vines hanging down, and I'm just sliding my brush sideways, scumbling, wiggling, pulling, and flicking to create that kind of a look of hanging Spanish moss on a tree. Here I've got some sap green. It's very similar to Hooker's green. Any dark, deep, rich, warm, yellowy green will work great for this. And I'm even adding a little bit of burnt sienna black and cadmium yellow to it. And I've got a large round stipple brush here to create my foliage on my trees. So I'm just pushing and tapping, no water on my brush at all for this. I'm just going to continue adding more and more, but remembering to leave a little bit of light showing through and color showing through in between those branches and those little areas where I have all that foliage, because that's really important. I want to be able to see that light through in all those pretty colors. I'm going to extend my branches out and my foliage and bring it over here, wrap it around to the left side, so it kind of just is enveloping the whole canvas, almost like it's reaching its arm around and everything's just kind of cradled in there. And I'm going to make a few branches a little bit thicker and heavier. So we've got some bigger parts of the tree. So I think it's important to mention that you're not using just one color for your foliage. That can be very flat and unnatural looking. So you either want to tint your green with a bit of yellow or black, or both. And in this case, I'm using both. You get an instant multi-tonal, very natural look to your foliage and your landscapes when you do this, because as you're tapping and blending along, you're getting all those little hints. Some areas will, end up getting a little bit more yellow or a little bit more shadow from the black. So I never over blend those colors, all three of those colors on my palette. I kind of tap into all three and then I just directly go to my painting, if that makes sense, guys. That way you're not getting just one color. And I like to do that with my flowers too when I'm working on flower petals. So I'm going along, adding a little bit of foliage on either side of my path, bringing it down to the roots of the tree. And I'm going to even bring a little bit up on the tree trunk and make it look like it's kind of twisting and wrapping around part of the tree trunk. And then turn my brush sideways again like I did with a filbert earlier and just kind of tap, pull, wiggle, and flick to give that mossy kind of effect that I really like to add to my paintings. I think it just has that weeping willow kind of look. It feels very graceful. So yeah, I kind of go back and forth with my paintings. I'll tend to add weeping willows or mossy look to my tree. I like hanging, dangling vines, all that kind of stuff. I think creates an interesting landscape. So here you can see I'm just tapping on the left side of the tree where the light would be hitting it, and then leaving the right side, the far end of the canvas, in shadow. And then creating little bits of moss or a little rock wall here for when I add my waterfalls. I have just some foliage or moss covered rocks on that side. So just light little pulls and little short flicks will get you that hanging look. Okay, and now just out of nowhere, I just decide to just pull over an instant little bridge like that, just with this round stipple brush. I'll go back to that bridge later with a smaller brush and add some white lines on there to give it some railing and some posts. So I've got a small flat brush here that I'm using with white and a little bit of my green or yellow, just any color to make it show up. So I'm going to do 3 lines here, one for each side of the railing and then one for the bottom of the bridge itself. I'll then turn my brush straight up and down and just do quick little short lines. And then pull little diagonal lines on each side. Brush, I'm going to start coming in with some waterfalls that show up a little bit more. So I am going to be adding these right here where I was going to have a staircase. And I love this cascading, just dropping of waterfalls anywhere in a painting, in a landscape. Doesn't make sense, and I think that's what I love about it, that there's just no sense of it. It's just, it is what it is. It's beautiful, it's dreamy, and I'm just using a little bit of water on my brush and some titanium white. So I'm going to have these waterfalls drop down into a little pool here, and then I'm just going to create more levels and little waterfalls. So wherever you want to have a smaller, shorter waterfall, you're just going to do some shorter brush strokes. And you can also use a filbert brush if you want. If you don't have a flat brush, a filbert works. A fan brush works as well. I just feel like I have a little bit more control with a flat brush. I feel like my waterfalls, if I'm working on smaller waterfalls, I can get more control and they'll look a little bit more neat and tidy. Depends on what kind of fan brush you use. I'm having trouble lately finding a really good fan brush that doesn't make my trees or my waterfalls look super messy. So if you guys have any recommendations, I would love to hear from you guys. Leave a comment below with the best fan brush that you've ever used and that you can recommend for me and for others that are watching this video. So here guys, I really kind of wasn't aware that you can't see everything I'm doing. I'm sorry if I'm kind of in the way. I tried to zoom in as best as I could here, but all I'm doing is just creating some more waterfalls right underneath this bridge. And then I'm going to have some going above, or coming down, dropping down from above, I should say. And that's another reason why you want to leave those gaps and those spaces in between your tree branches and all that foliage, so you can sneak in some little waterfalls here and there. I'm going to re-highlight some of these lines on my little bridge here. And I'm just pulling the excess white paint out of my brush right across the bottom. I've got a small round mop brush or blending brush here. It's dry, and I'm going to make a lighter color to add some highlights to all my foliage here. So I'm using white and cadmium yellow. So what you want to do is just enhance all of your foliage. You don't want to completely cover it all up. You want to have light on the top and dark on the bottom. Or depending on where your source of light is coming, or just wherever you want, you can have your left side with the highlights or your right side with the highlights. But the idea is to not cover up everything with the highlights. You need to have that balance of light and shadow. So leave a few spaces in between. And I'm using this size because this is the color that I want, or the size that I want my bushes to be. But if I wanted to do really, really big ones, then I would switch over to a much larger mop brush. But I reload my brush whenever I need to, so I have a nice fresh coat of paint for my highlights here on my brush, and I'm going to continue along all my foliage, adding this beautiful bright yellowy golden green and as well as on the tree tops. As long as I have enough shadow to balance it out. And if you end up feeling like you have too many highlights and not enough shadow, then it's so forgiving with acrylic to just go right back and add some more shadow wherever you need to. And I just decided right here that I think it would be really fun to have some flowers and some foliage and greenery on the top of my bridge, on the railings there, and right on the edge, the base of each side of the bridge. I think that just looks really, really pretty. And of course, eventually I'll be adding some cherry blossoms all around, and the pink that we're using, we'll be using a few colors. I've got neon red and neon pink for my flowers, and of course it's very complementary on the color wheel to green. So that's something to think about too. If you're not really sure about what colors look good together and what colors you want to use, if you don't have that kind of sense of knowing what colors work well together, then I recommend getting a color wheel that does the work for you, takes the guessing work away from it, and yeah, makes it can be really, really helpful. So I'm gonna add a little bit more white to my yellow here and make some areas much brighter and softer. So that's what the white will do. It'll really, really soften the colors and make it look like they're farther away, or perhaps maybe there's just a little bit of fog or mist over them back there. Okay, so for the next few minutes here, I'm just going to be picking away at adding more highlights to all my foliage. I'm going to dry brush out the excess paint along the bottom, where I'm going to have a little pool down towards the bottom left of this painting, and then think about what I'm going to be doing next after that. So at this stage, this is a very exciting stage at the painting for me when I get here, and I've got some waterfalls and a path, and there's just so many, the ideas really, really start flooding in and flowing for me. And I start to envision little cottages, little caves, little portals, and all sorts of fun stuff, butterflies. So if there's anything that you guys kind of like to mention too, if there's anything that you guys in particular would like to see me add to one of these paintings, I accept some requests over on Patreon. And yeah, so you can go over and request something over there, as well as receive early access to my videos. There's extra content, and there's monthly giveaways, plus you can get one-on-one advice from me. All right, so I want to come in and add a little bit more black and burnt sienna, and add some branches here that are going to come over top of some of the foliage. And I'm making these really kind of quirky and wiggly, and I want them to have a lot of character. So just coming in between, and I'm just using a flat brush, sometimes a filbert brush, but you can really use, if you're just careful, you can use the corner of a flat brush. And you can also use your round brush or a liner brush for this. So I'm just going to start making parts of the pathway and the tree. All around the foliage areas have a little bit more of an edge to them. So I'll start wrapping this around here, and then right along here I decide I'm going to have a little bit more of that edginess. Maybe it's a branch. Haven't decided at this point here. I haven't decided, and I don't even know that it's going to be a cherry blossom branch reaching out and over yet. I just knew that I wanted to start adding a little bit more shadow and contrast in here, And again, that burnt sienna is just, I just love that against the green with the black, because that burnt sienna has such a rich redness and warmth to it. It works really, really well in landscapes when you're using a lot of green. I really recommend that. So just wiggling and going in and around, being playful and creating little crooked little brush strokes, little wiggles, sometimes making it a little flowy. Okay, I'm going to follow along here on my tree by adding more of the black and burnt sienna. I'm making that one branch there right above the bridge a little bit thicker, and then I'm going to go right underneath my bridge and add a dark line for a contrast. And then I'm just gonna, it's a bit crooked, so I'm gonna even that out a little bit. That's what I'm doing right here. And then I'm gonna redefine my highlights. So I'm not really changing anything. I'm just enhancing my highlights and my shadows. And I'm almost done with my contrast and my shadows and my branches, all of that stuff. And I'm gonna start thinking about where I'm gonna place my flowers, what kind of flowers I'm gonna have, and what colors I'm gonna be using. So you guys can use a few different brushes to create your flowers. You can use a round brush, a filbert brush, and even a really small flat brush would work. I'm going to be using a round brush probably, and one of my really small filbert brushes. And you want to make sure that you have a few different sizes on hand of each type of brush. Really recommend that. I can't say that enough, because you're not always going to be painting the same size of flower or tree or bridge, right? You're going to sometimes have a smaller one or a bigger one, so you need to have a few different sizes of each brush. So I'm just taking a little filbert brush here with some white and a little bit of red. I've got neon red and neon pink. I don't want to overblend. I want to stay away again from making one color, so I can get those natural highlights and more pink or more red in some areas. And I like that to kind of just happen organically and naturally on the canvas as I'm painting it. It just keeps everything looking a lot more natural, and it's just a lot more enjoyable to paint this way. So I'm kind of just taking a little scoop of each color, and I'm going to add little dabs and dots for the little buds that haven't fully opened up yet. Those are going to be just on the end of the branch. And then as we get further along, I'll push and tap and let off to create those larger little flower petals. And then here and there add a few little pink waterfalls and little bits of ribbony looking moss, just pretty little patterns that I kind of end up adding along the way for no reason, just other than it was fun to create them, and I thought they looked kind of elegant and graceful and pretty alongside the flowers in this painting. Okay, so I'm just going to continue along with my trail of cherry blossoms alongside the little waterfalls, those cascading waterfalls. So you can see sometimes I'm using a little bit more pink, sometimes I'm picking up a little bit more red, and sometimes more white, so I get a real variety of tones in my flowers. And they'll really show up, and it's just kind of nice to play around with the amount and of pink and red and white. And of course you can use different colors for your flowers if you want. If you like more of a darker burgundy, you can use that. Like a crimson red would be good. You don't have to use neon colors. I just really love my neon pinks and my neon reds. I have a lot of fun with my neon paints. So I'm gonna hop over here now, and where I had that one drip coming down, this main one here, I'm gonna make this a little cherry blossom trailing vine coming down here. Kind of just gonna wrap around some cherry blossoms around that little drippy vine we've got going on. So I'll add some on one side, on the other side, so there's no pattern. You want to kind of stay away from creating a pattern. You want it to look really natural, so you want to paint your flowers randomly. So at this stage of the painting, I'm really enjoying myself, and I feel like the more the better, and I'm gonna keep going and adding more and more flowers because it's fun and I think it's pretty. You really can't go wrong with flowers because they're just so pretty, and flowers make us feel good, they're pretty, and they smell nice. And I kind of like to paint things that I love, and I like to create art that brings me joy, and I think everybody in general likes the same things. Like, we all like flowers, right? We all like rainbows, and I think that's why a lot of people are drawn to these types of paintings. And more than enjoying to look at them, they're so enjoyable to paint. I'm really looking forward to seeing your guys' versions of this. I'm going to be leaving a link, like I always do, below for Patreon and my private Facebook group. So it's for all of you subscribers and patrons of mine to share your versions of my tutorials. And you guys are so talented. My goodness, I can't believe all of you guys and all of your talent and your beautiful paintings that you're sharing daily. It's such a joy to see, and I want to thank you guys for becoming part of the group and helping to support me to make all these videos. It means a lot. Without you guys, I probably would have left YouTube last year. So it's a real big deal. If you guys can contribute any way at all, I would sure appreciate it. It takes a lot of time and energy and materials, supplies, all that stuff to put out this content consistently and continually for you guys. So I'm just going to keep going with all my flowers, adding more and more, and sometimes I'm adding a few hints of my neon red and burnt sienna on part of the branches. I just want to enhance and play up on the color a little bit more wherever I can. Another thing that I want to mention about the flowers is they're kind of far away and we can't really see a super amount of detail in them, but if you want to add a few little dabs, I'm just adding a few little dots and dabs for the center of the flowers with a little bit of burnt sienna and black. Now you can also do that with a little bit of white if you want, just to give a little something for the center of those larger flowers. And I would recommend using a little liner brush for that, and it'll be a lot easier and a lot more delicate looking. Now once I finish up with my flowers, I decide to add a little Japanese house type of cottage. Didn't look at any pictures for this. It's just kind of my own made up version of, in my mind, what my little Japanese house or pagoda would look like. So you guys can paint whatever kind of house that you want, a little cottage, cabin, whatever you want, or a little Japanese temple or pagoda like I have. I think it kind of is nice when you have a fantasy painting of something that's really, really pretty, to envision yourself living there and have a cozy little cabin or a house there, a little getaway. So I kind of like to add those into my fantasy paintings. I was kind of at this point thinking of maybe adding some little treehouse cabins or cottages like I've done in the past, but I ended up going in this direction of the little pagoda down below. So that's just another idea for you guys if you're kind of wondering what other approach you could take with something like this. You could add some little even some little hanging lanterns to the tree, some little lights hanging. That would look really pretty. But yeah, there's so many different things, and just doing this voiceover right now and looking back at myself painting this, I'm even seeing so many other things that I didn't see as I was working on it. Things that I could do, things that I could add, and it's kind of making me want to get my paints out right now and stop doing this voiceover and just get painting. So those creative juices are definitely flowing right now just watching this, so I'm hoping that you guys are getting the same energy and inspiration out of this video. It's so much fun to be able to create and make art, and it's a privilege, so hope you guys are taking advantage of the opportunities you get every day to create something new and enjoy yourself. I'm going to start adding a few more waterfalls right in here and adding some highlights to my little pool. So I'm taking my white and my pink, a little bit of red, but keeping it really, really light and soft for my highlights, and then little ripples or movement for the bottom of where the waterfalls drop. And then I'm going to actually make it look like there's suggestion of some water lilies down there too. So I'll be adding just little scoops and keeping it very impressionistic, using my light green and yellow and white for the lily pads, and then just little dabs of pink and white for my flowers and little ripples and highlights in the water. Now I'm taking some cadmium yellow along with my pink, red, and white, and I'm going to make a fuzzy, peachy, soft pastel color. And I just decided I wanted to create some cherry blossoms this color as well right in here. Just make them a little bit warmer. And then continue with some more waterfalls. And for the remainder of this video, I'll just be adding more and more flowers, waterfalls, and then creating my little Japanese temple or pagoda. And I'm gonna just let you guys relax. I'm gonna stop talking now, and you can enjoy the soft, relaxing music in the background and finish watching this video. Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel. It helps it grow and puts it out there for more and more people to watch and enjoy and learn from. And I wish you guys happy painting. I hope that you get inspired by this. Leave a comment below if you did. And I'll see you guys really soon in another video.